What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the Fierce Framework podcast, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and cultivating confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm a business coach with a passion to see women breaking out of the mold society tells us we're supposed to fit into and to start living life more on our own terms. I believe the world benefits when women are living lives that we're lit up about and we're pursuing a purpose that makes us feel fulfilled. My goal with this podcast is to share inspiration, stories of other entrepreneurs just like you, and practical tools and tips to help you become fierce in your business. If that sounds good to you, you're going to love this episode. Let's get down to it. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I want to talk about why it's so important to let ourselves experiment. This is something I'm working on right now. So, as per usual, definitely not an expert, just sharing my thoughts and my story and the things I've tried thus far. So, one of the things I'm realizing is that I think a lot of the time, like, we don't know what we want because we don't know what's available. I also think there's a flip side where it's like there's too many options and then we get like super overwhelmed and we get stuck in like analysis paralysis because we're trying to figure out like all these different options and like what the best one is and we're so afraid to make the wrong decision. Um, because we're trying to like figure everything out before we get started because like we don't want to do the wrong thing. And I don't know. I'm 36. It feels a little late to like realize this. I don't think there's as many like wrong decisions as we think there are. Like, yes, there are poor choices to be made. There are things that like make our lives more difficult. But I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, like very few things are irredeemable that are like really gonna like throw you off track. Um, and like I think it's hard because it's nuanced, right? But I do think like our intentions really matter. Like when you're going into something with good faith and you have done like a reasonable amount of prep work, which is hard to define. Um, like I think there's more grace than like we realize. And that's something that I'm working on kind of trusting. So I don't know, I just want to like share this with you. Because I think the like what struck me, right, is the idea that like I keep finding myself and talking with other people also that it's like we don't know what we want like when it comes to like what we want to do in life or like what we want to be when we grow up, right? Like I see this a lot with millennials. Like we don't know what we want to be when we grow up, even though hate to break it to us, but like we're technically grown up. So I know we all hate adulting, and I am queen of that. But and so it's like, why? What is this like phenomenon, right? Of like, where is this coming from? Where we don't know what we want, and I think there's a ton of answers to it, and a lot of it's probably tied to trauma, right? Because like when you're in survival mode and you don't really have time to like dream and think of what you want, then like that part of you kind of gets shut down and your imagination kind of is forced to kind of atrophy a little bit, I think. I'm not a therapist, so this is just kind of my perspective on things. And so I think like we kind of stop letting those ideas take root and we stop like kind of pursuing those little tinglings of like, oh hey, what if I tried this? Or should I check that out? Or like, I think I want this. Like we shut it down so much that we stop like our brain stops offering up those suggestions. It's like auto predict, right? In or predictive text. Like if Google or AI or like whatever it is giving that like prediction and we consistently shut it down, it makes sense that eventually like the system's gonna learn that that's not what you want. And so I think our brains do the same thing of like when it offers up dreams and ideas and new things to try and like novelty, and we're constantly shutting it down like, no, I don't have time for that. I can't afford that. Like, I'm trying to survive, or I'm trying to like, I have tunnel vision on like XYZ, whatever situation it is. our brain learns like, okay, that's not what they want. Let's stop bringing up those ideas. And then we get to a place where we're like in our 30s and having this crisis of like, what am I doing with my life? And it's like somebody finally asks the question, right? Of like, well, what do you want? And you're like, what? What do I want? What do these words mean? Why is this the first time I'm hearing that? What do I want? And then we start freaking out, and then we're like, it's the dog pile of like the overwhelm of the question, and then also like the embarrassment of like, why don't I know this? Like, shouldn't I know myself? Like, do I know nothing? Like, and it's a lot, right? So, if I'm the only one who feels that way, that's valid. But if I'm not, you're definitely not alone. Um, and based on like what I've seen online and stuff and just from people sharing, I really think it's actually like common, which is super sad. But I do want to encourage you, like, the shame and the embarrassment, that's not doing anything for us. So we can just like set that down. We can let that go. Like, yeah, it sucks that I don't know the answers to these things. Oh well, we can only go from where we are now, right? We can't dream up a new direction for where we wish we would have gone in the past. I mean, you can, but it's not going to change where you are today. We can only start from where we are. So let the embarrassment go, let the shame go, whatever the reasons are of why you don't know what you want. They are what they are, and you are here where you are now, and you get to decide now, and you get to go from here. So we can let that shame and embarrassment go. We can let those feelings go. We don't need to beat ourselves up. We can just go from where we're at. Um, so yeah, kind of refocusing the ADHD, right? Um, Yeah, so I want to kind of discuss this trend of like not knowing what we want and kind of like I think some of it is because we don't know what's available. And I think for that part of it, part of how we could address that would be to try things and like see what's available. One of the things I like to talk about is when you start digging into something, you can start seeing like further down the path and you can actually see more options. So think of it like a root system or like the blood vessels in your lungs, right? So they start out, or maybe it's the air sacs in your lungs, I don't know, but it starts out with like one section, right? Like one bigger section. And then as you go down, it branches out, right? So you have like, I'm not going to try my anatomy skills, but you have like the bigger vessel, and then it branches out into the smaller vessels, and like then those branch out, and then those branch out, and then those branch out. Okay. So if you are way back here and you're at the very beginning, you're at like the trachea, right? So that's one tube and it hasn't even split into two yet. So if you're like at the top, it's one tube, it's one trachea. But then as you get closer down to the lungs, you can see like, oh, this actually splits off into two directions. So if you don't go down into the situation far enough, you don't even know that there's two options, right? You think there's just one trachea. Well, and then lo and behold, you choose one of those options, right? And then you go further down that tunnel, and then you see those start branching off too. So something far down the tunnel you wouldn't even know existed until you started taking that journey into the original tunnel. I'm trusting that that's not too complicated. I feel like I didn't deliver that perfectly, but you're a smart cookie. And if not, please give me feedback and I will work on my analogies. But I don't want to like over explain. So moving on. So that is kind of my point, right? And so that's why I think it can be really powerful to experiment. And my friend Shauna calls it sticking a toe in. She's the CEO of Ignited Decisions. Love her. I've been on her podcast. I've had her on the podcast. Um, she's actually my coach. So yeah, she's amazing. Love her. And she calls it sticking a toe in, right? Where it's like you're just trying just a little tiny bit. You don't have to jump in head first. You don't have to go all the way. You don't have to be all gung ho about whatever this thing is. You can just stick a toe in. And so whether you want to call it experimenting, trying, sticking a toe in, we're talking about the same thing, right? Like give it a shot, okay? So Start simple and like very one of I feel like I have to caveat with this, but technically, like researching is sticking a toe in, right? I want to be careful with that because I know for me, I can get stuck in that phase forever. And I'm like, I feel like I should need to learn everything about all there is about this thing before I can try it, or else I'm just going to be wasting my time. Like, I feel like I need to learn everything before so that I can like know if it's worth trying or not instead of just trying and see what happens. But it is important. You can just do some base research, right? If it's an immediate no, like great, you just saved yourself some time. But if you've done a little bit of research and you still want to explore, I want to encourage you to don't get stuck in the research phase because that is easy to do. And then we're researching and researching forever. And then we start psyching ourselves out and we never take any action. So do like the bare minimum amount of research to where it's like, okay, your bases are covered. And then go experience the thing. Because also there's so many times when like we don't know how we actually feel about something or how we're going to react to something until we try it. I don't know if you've ever heard, this is the example that pops into my mind, but like I've heard so many stories when women are shopping for wedding dresses, they think they won't like one, or they think they won't like a certain style, or they just assume they won't like a dress, and then they try it on, and lo and behold, they actually love it. So that's how a lot of things are. Like we just have to experience it to really know if that's something we want to do, if that's something that aligns with us, if that's something that lights us up, right? Like you can think about it, you can consider it, and those things are important, right? They have a place for sure, but go out and try it and experience it because then you're really going to get the feedback of is this something that I want? Is this something that aligns with me? Is this something that like lights me up, right? And you're going to get that answer and that feedback so much quicker and so much clearer if you give it a try. Okay. So, for example, starting a podcast, right? Thought about it. I was like, okay, I don't know. Like, could be fun. Seems like a good idea. I was gonna start it with friends. Now okay, there's a good example, right? So I assumed that I was gonna be having, or my idea was that I was gonna be having like interviews with friends and we were just gonna talk over wine and just like talk about all the stuff that comes up because I feel like we have the best conversations with our girlfriends over a glass of wine, right? Or a bottle. And I was like, these conversations are amazing. And, I had a few different friends and I was like, I feel like we should be recording our conversations. Like, these are fire, right? And so, like, that is what prompted me to start the podcast. Well, then I was like, okay, once I started, I hadn't set up interviews yet. And I was like, well, I want to start and like kind of get my feet wet, dip a toe in and see how it is and, work out how I'm going to record it and if I need a mic and what kind of mic and like then if I want to do a video, which I did. Like, so I wanted to just get started, right? Next thing I know, I'm doing solo episodes like all the time and loving it. Right. So I didn't even consider doing solo episodes really until I started my podcast. And I was like, wait, I don't want to get a friend on here and like not know because I didn't even have a podcast mic at the time. And I was like, I don't want the audio to be terrible. I was doing video podcasts on my phone. Like so the audio is fine, but it's not great. And I was like, how is this gonna work like with a friend? So I was experimenting and I was like, well, let me try it out and see how it works for me, and then we'll like go from there. And lo and behold, I love just talking to you. Okay. Where, I've had wonderful interviews and I love them. And the logistics really aren't that bad, but sometimes I like get in my head and I wait till the last minute a lot of the time. And so I'm just recording by myself and it's like, boom, love that. I would not have known until I tried it. Like I really didn't think I would find things to say for half an hour. And I time myself now because sometimes I'm like, I just get carried away, bro. So all that to say, like, our experience is so much more powerful than like thinking about what we would do in a situation or thinking about how it would feel or if we would like it. Like, try things. And I am like saying this to myself too. Like, I want to encourage me, and of course you, to be like, give ourselves the freedom to try things. Because I know for me, like being ADHD, one of the things I kept hearing growing up is that like, you're flaky, you're like all over the place, like you need to pick something and stick with it. And that felt like a death sentence, but I was like, that's what I thought I had to do. And so then you kind of overcompensate to like prove you're mature and that you're like, don't have mental health issues and you don't have a disorder, right? And so then I was like super rigid and like didn't want to try things because I was like, if once you try it, you can't stop because then you're flaky. And so like that's a story that I'm working on unlearning right now at the ripe old age of 36. Is that you know what? Actually, there's a difference between being experimental and being flaky. Like, and a lot of that is expectations and communication and how you're impacting other people's lives, right? Like if I tell you I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to have a podcast and I'm going to like be here and do it for, and I'm like, I ask you to be on my podcast, right? And then I never start it or I flake out before you get a chance to interview what that's different than like, hey, I'm going to try a podcast. I've got, I'm going to record an episode. I would love for you to listen to it and give me feedback and we'll go from there. Right. So it's all about expectations of whether or not it's like flaky or disrespecting other people's times. Like we just have to communicate, okay? And a lot of the things we want to try are things that are like not really impacting other people, right? It's like you want to try going out to dinner alone or like going out to a bar alone or like going on a trip. Like so if you try it once and you hate it, you're not really ruining anybody else's life. Like so many of these things that like we want to do or we're not sure if we would like give it a shot. And it's like I think it comes up a lot with business, right? We want to have like the best idea, like the one good idea. And there are really not so many wrong choices as we think there are. It's basically going to be like whatever the right decision is the one that you're going to get behind. So try out different things and have that experimental stage so that you can see what's available. Because right now, you might not be far enough into the tunnel to even realize that that trachea you're in splits off into two lungs and then splits off and splits off and splits off. And there are a million possibilities. And then the further you get down, the more you can see what you like, right? Like if you want to try art, if you want to express your creativity, there's a million options, right? So maybe you don't want to dance, but you want to like do painting or some kind of, I don't know what the proper term for that is, like visual art that's so like whether it's painting or sculpting or drawing or whatever, right? So you might know that you don't want to sing, you don't want to dance, but you want to do like painting type. Well, then you might get into painting, right? And you might discover a medium that you didn't even know existed. There's oil, there's watercolor, there's whatever, but maybe there's some niche thing that like you didn't even know you could play with. And how would you know until you start going down that journey? Okay, so give yourself the permission to go ahead and try, dip a toe in and see how things go and see like if that's something you want to pursue. Are there more branches down there where you can find something that fits so well that like really lights you up and is really in line with your purpose that you want to do? Because if you stay all the way back at the end of the tunnel, you might never learn that that thing exists. Okay? So I also want to encourage you that like a lot of our fear is around the unknown. And that's what feeds a lot of our hesitation and our fear to try things, right? So when you're doing it, when you're giving it a shot, you are literally dispelling that fear because you are knowing the what was unknown before. As you're going down that tunnel and you start to see it branch off, you're like, oh my gosh, which path do I take? I don't know because you don't know what's down either one, right? You're like, I don't know which one to take. And you finally just decide, like, hey, I'm going to go left and I'm going to see what happens. Okay. And you go left and it is what it is. And maybe it's great and maybe it's not, right? But now you know. And so as you're in that left branch now you don't have to be afraid of the unknown because you're in it and you see what it is. And you don't have to be freaking out and like dreaming up all these terrible scenarios because you're just finding out for yourself. So, really, like action is one of the biggest things to dispel that fear and anxiety of the unknown because it's like, well, let's find out. Like, let's just give it a shot. We're going to do our basic research, like to be safe, right? We're going to cover our bases. We're not going to like jump into things blind, but like, we're going to give it a shot and see what happens. Like, what is over there? What is that going to feel like? Let's try. And then you don't have to be afraid of it anymore because it's not the unknown anymore. And you can do hard things. Okay. So, like, have some faith in yourself. Also, there's kind of, I guess, like three things that I want to talk about as per usual. Um, I want to encourage you to like try things that like aren't really you. Um, because especially if you were in a similar situation where it's like you felt like you weren't allowed to try because you didn't want to be seen as flaky or inconsistent, you might be kind of like stuck in a box that fit a personality that you were while you were still developing, and you kind of chose what felt best or like what was most familiar, and you're like, all right, well, I'm just gonna stick with this because I don't want to like branch out and try all these other things because then I'm gonna be like flaky and irresponsible, and so I'm just gonna stick with this. But those things that those hobbies or those like whatever you're spending your time on and your energy and you're like feeding into, that might be fueling a past version of you. So allow yourself to try something that like doesn't really fit your image of yourself because you might be growing and you might be interested in who you could become. And that might be part of developing yourself and growing into the next version of yourself. So don't trap yourself in only letting yourself do things that like seem like you, that like fit your aesthetic, right? Like allow yourself to be cringe. And if something interests you, give it a shot. It doesn't have to fit into the box of your identity at this time. And definitely not, it doesn't have to fit into a box of a past identity. You don't owe anybody an old version of yourself. So if it interests you, even if it feels like it's not really you, what's the harm? Go ahead and give it a shot. Maybe there's a little bit of an undiscovered part of yourself that's going to help awaken. Also, you're allowed to do things differently than other people do. And like that was huge for me, right? It's like speaking of the podcasting, right? Interviewing is amazing and I love it. And it's a lot for me. Like there's just some logistical things, and then I get in my head about the editing because I feel like responsible for the other person. And I want to make sure it's really good for them, of course. And some of that is completely reasonable and expected, right? Like it's just decent, like common courtesy. But then some of that is like just additional pressure that is unnecessary. So there's like a lot of factors there. But and it's not like nobody does solo podcast episodes, right? But it's like I learned that I don't have to have all my episodes be interviews, or I don't have to have my podcast be every week. Like that was huge for me because I was like, bro, I'm like, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. Okay. So doing every other week, game changer. I'm like, that is feasible. And that's what I do every other week. And it's like, just because everybody else does a weekly podcast for an hour long, like when I first got into podcasting, that seemed to be the standard, like 1 hour every week. And I was like, that's a lot. And through this journey, I've learned that like, I don't have to do it that way just because everybody else is doing it. I can do it differently. So you can still be a podcaster but do it differently. Just like there's a fit on TikTok recently about a bigger girl running. And they're like, you're not a real runner. You can't run. No, 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 no. It's like, yeah. Or if you're slower or faster or whatever, if you run and walk, like you're still a runner and you can just do it differently. Or you can, like, whatever you want to do. Like, you don't have to do it the way everybody else does. One of like my favorite things is like punk covers of pop songs. Okay, so like I love that. Or you think about like Trans-Siberian Orchestra, right? It's an orchestra, like we think of like classical music and they do rock. And that's so cool. And we love that. And like what a beautiful evolution of art, right? So if you want to do something, you don't have to do it the same way that everybody else does. Because I think that that's something we kind of like I find myself like getting stuck in is like I get it in my head that the way everybody does it is like the right way, and I don't want to do it the wrong way. And it's like, well, what if there wasn't a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it? What if you just did it the way that felt best to you, or the way that worked for you, the way that interests you? Like you can play bass and do like jazz bass instead of just like doo, 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 like rock bass, right? It can be more interesting, it can be more intricate, it can be different. So allow yourself to try things that aren't really you. and give yourself permission to do things in a way that's different than the way other people are doing it. Even if it's the same thing, you can put your own spin on it if that feels like a better fit for you or if that's what you want to do, right? And then that's just like an advantage because you're setting yourself apart from everybody else who's doing that. And it makes it more like interesting and fun, right? It gives so much more novelty because you're putting a different spin on it. And how cool is that? Like you could create a whole other like niche in whatever you're trying to do because you are doing it a little bit differently. Lastly, I want to remind you, I want to remind myself, um, you can start over. You can stop doing something and you can do something else. This ties back into kind of like the fear of being flaky that we were talking about at the beginning. Like, yes, communicate. Okay. Like, set expectations when you can. You know, if you've promised somebody that you're going to interview them on your podcast and then you haven't gotten to it yet, and now you don't want to do your podcast anymore, don't ghost them. Just let them know what's going on, right? Communicate. Like, that's okay. You are allowed to stop doing things and try something new. You are allowed to pivot. Um, Trying something doesn't mean you have to do that thing forever. So that has been important for me because I'm like, it helps take the pressure off of experimenting and allow it to actually be an experiment, not like a year-long thing that I've like committed to doing. And then, I don't know if you're like this at all, or if your disorders match up with mine, but honestly, like once the pressure is off, it's actually so much easier to do things. So that it might even help you if there's something you want to do, like not building it up to be like this is going to be your personality and you have to stick with whatever you chose to be for the rest of your life. Like you can have a phase. You can have a phase and you can try something and then, whatever. Like that's one of the things I'm trying to like talk myself into with my job right now. Like you can do something else and then you can go back if you need to or you can do something similar. Like anyway. So, yeah, I just want to encourage you like how will you know what's out there unless you get out there and you see? Like, yes, research is amazing. Anecdotal stories from other people, amazing. Great starting place. But don't stay stuck there. Like, actually get out there and try some stuff and see. Because every time you have that feeling of like, there's got to be more, yes, there is. That's why you have that feeling. There is more. There's more to life. You're here for a reason. Like, go try some shit and see what makes you feel alive. Okay. There's a quote from Howard Thurman that I love that Kathy Heller used to have on her podcast all the time. She'd repeat it all the time, and I love it. And it's don't ask. Um, okay, now I'm gonna butcher it. Cool, but it's like instead of asking what the world needs, ask yourself what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs is more people who are alive. So in these times where there's so much uncertainty and there's so much negativity and there's so many people who are checked out or just scraping by or like hanging on by a thread, right? Like for those of us who can get out there and be alive and be a light and be an inspiration and like a beacon of hope to other people, like let's do that if we can. So that got really deep. Um, I think you're doing great, first of all. If you have any questions or you want to talk about this more, I would love to hear from you. You can always hit me up on socials at the Fierce Framework, or if you prefer email, I have an email address. It's confidence at thefierceframework.net. Somebody already took thefierceframework.com, which makes me sad. But yeah, .net. So I'll see you so soon. And until then, keep becoming fierce. Thank you so much for joining me on this past episode of the Fierce Framework, where we talk about becoming fierce through taking messy action, baby steps, and growing your confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you got a lot out of the episode. If you're looking for a little bit more, make sure that you are subscribed to my newsletter. I drop a new email every week. I'm also on social media platforms at the Fierce Framework, and I do have some coaching spots opening up. So if that's something you're interested in, you want to connect on that, feel free to drop me a DM or check out the link that I've included in the description. I can't wait to see you next time, and until then, keep becoming fierce.